She picked up the cake I had spent hours picking out and slammed it onto the counter like it meant nothing. I watched the icing smear against the cabinet door, sliding down like it was embarrassed to be there. My mom didn't even flinch. She looked at me, smirked a little and said, "Honestly, your sister deserves this kind of celebration, not you." I stood there with a plastic knife in my hand and a pit growing in my stomach. I had spent over $100 on that cake alone, not to mention the food, decorations and the floral centerpiece she now claimed was too much. Before I could say anything, my brother chuckled from the side and said, "What's it like to be the family's backup plan?" He didn't even look up from his phone. The words hung in the air and no one defended me. Not even my dad, who just kept eating like it was any other Sunday. I was in the middle of serving ham I had cooked myself. A glaze recipe I tested all week just to make sure it was perfect. The plates were mine. The tablecloth was mine. The house we were sitting in. I helped them refinance it when they were about to lose it. I just stood there swallowing hard, feeling something inside me crack. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just kept passing out food in silence while something inside me started whispering, "This is the last time." Growing up, I was always the one who followed the rules. The one who made things easier. While other kids were out breaking curfews or sneaking off to parties, I was home helping mom sort out the bills or running errands for dad. I didn't complain, not because I enjoyed it but because I thought that's what you do when you love your family. You help. You show up. You sacrifice. By the time I got my first job, my parents were already leaning on me more than they should have. I was only 19 when I started covering the electric bill some months. At 23, I co-signed their mortgage when they were at risk of losing the house. "Just until we get back on our feet," they promised. That was 10 years ago. I still haven't seen a single payment come back my way. I never asked. I just kept showing up. Meanwhile, my sister Dana got married young. She was barely 20 and suddenly she was mom's pride and joy. "She made us grandparents," they'd say with that gleam in their eyes. Every time she walked in the room, it was like the air shifted to suit her. I love my niece and nephew, I truly do, but the way they talked about Dana, you'd think she was a saint for reproducing. Never mind the fact that her husband has been out of work for almost 2 years and they still rely on small loans from me that never get repaid. Then there's my brother Jason. He shows up maybe twice a year, always late, always with some excuse. But somehow when he walks in, Dad lights up like the 4th of July. "There's my boy," he says, slapping him on the back like Jason just got back from war, instead of showing up drunk to Easter brunch. They excuse everything he does. Missed birthdays, forgotten calls, not even sending gifts for the kids. "He's busy," they say. "At least he's trying." Me. I've been here the whole time. Paying for groceries when they couldn't. Driving mom to her doctor's appointments. Helping Dana with the kids when her husband disappears for hours. Picking Jason up once when he got stranded after a bar fight. I was always the one cleaning up after everyone, stitching the family together one thread at a time. But I never made it into their stories. I was never the headline. Just a footnote, quiet, dependable, forgettable. For years I swallowed that pain. I smiled through it, telling myself this is just how families are. They don't always say thank you, but they love you deep down. But that Easter morning, watching them laugh while I stood over food I paid for in a house I helped save, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was slow, quiet, like a tide pulling back before a storm. I realized I had been the glue for so long, that no one even noticed I was cracking. That Easter Sunday started out like I hoped it would, calm, warm, even kind of cheerful. I had gotten up at 6 a.m. to glaze the ham and prep everything just right. The house smelled like cinnamon and cloves, like the holidays were supposed to. I'd ordered a $100 lemon raspberry cake from that upscale bakery 2 towns over. It had white chocolate bunnies on top, and I even asked them to write "Happy Easter Family" in gold script. I arranged fresh tulips along the table, folded the napkins into little bunny ears and set every place by hand. The food alone had cost me over $400, not to mention the flowers, the decorations and the wine I picked up for mom and dad because they liked a glass with dinner. As people started to arrive, it felt like maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. Dana came in first with her kids. She didn't say thank you, but at least she didn't roll her eyes this time. Jason showed up next, smelling like cologne and stale beer, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy. Mom kissed him on the cheek and said, "There's my handsome boy," like we were all extras in a movie about his life. Everyone gathered around the table as I brought out the food: honey-glazed carrots, rosemary potatoes, and the ham I'd basted every hour like it was a newborn. I was still in the kitchen laying out the final platter when I heard Mom say it, clear as day, right in front of everyone. "I don't know why she goes all out like this," she said, waving a hand toward the table. "Honestly, your sister's the one who deserves celebrations, not her. At least Dana gave us grandchildren. What has she given us?" I froze in place. My heart started pounding in my ears. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the tray. And then Jason, without even looking up from his phone, chuckled and added, "She'll probably die alone with her cats. I mean, who throws herself a party like this?" He laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Dana laughed too. "She does try too hard," she said, sipping her wine. "It's kind of sad." I walked out of the kitchen, still holding the roasted vegetables, and laid them gently on the table. I didn't look at anyone. I kept my head down and forced my hands to stay steady. That's when Mom reached for the cake. I thought she was going to move it to the center of the table, maybe take a picture or say something nice. Instead, she picked it up with one hand, turned toward the counter, and let it fall, just like that. It landed face first, splattering icing across the wood and smearing the words I paid extra to have written. "Oops," she said without even looking at me. "I guess that's what happens when you try to be something you're not." No one gasped. No one told her to stop. My dad just kept chewing. Jason kept scrolling. Dana sipped her wine like nothing had happened. I stood there, right next to the destroyed cake, and felt something inside me hollow out. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted someone, anyone, to say it wasn't okay. But they didn't. And I knew they wouldn't. Because this wasn't new. This was just another Sunday to them. So I did what I always do. I finished serving the meal. I asked if anyone wanted more ham. I passed the rolls. I refilled the wine. And I did it all with a smile that barely held its shape. I didn't say a single word about the cake. I didn't ask why they treated me like a stranger. I just kept moving, one plate at a time, as my throat burned and my stomach twisted. But inside, something else was happening. I wasn't breaking. I was waking up. I realized in that moment, they didn't see me. Not really. They saw what I gave them. The groceries. The rides. The money. The second chances. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was an ATM with a casserole dish. And as I scraped frosting off the counter, I thought to myself, they think I'll never stop giving. But they have no idea what's coming. I didn't say goodbye when I left. I quietly gathered my purse, slipped on my coat, and walked out the front door without a word. No one noticed. No one asked where I was going. As if I were just a shadow in the house, I helped them keep standing. I got into my car and sat there for a long time. I didn't even start the engine. I just stared through the windshield, watching the wind play with the petals from the tulips I had carefully picked the day before. My hands were still sticky with frosting. My heart felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out and left the shell. But beneath that emptiness, something sharp and clear was growing. It wasn't rage. It was resolve. For years I had convinced myself that if I just kept giving, they'd eventually see me, love me, respect me. But today proved something I had tried so hard not to believe: they never would. To them I was useful, not loved. Convenient, not cherished. I drove home in silence. No music. No phone. Just the quiet hum of my tires on the road and the echo of Mom's voice repeating in my head, "Your sister deserves celebrations, not you." I got home and didn't even take my coat off. I walked straight to the dining table, pulled out my laptop, and opened it with shaking fingers. But this time they weren't shaking from sadness. They were steadying with purpose. The first thing I did was log into the account I had set up for my parents. The one that had been quietly making automatic mortgage payments every month. I was the reason they still had a roof over their heads. I told myself it was just temporary help after Dad's surgery. But that temporary had turned into 3 years. I canceled the autopay. Then I moved to the emergency savings account I'd created. A joint account, just in case they needed help. I transferred every cent out of it and closed the account. Let Dana be the emergency plan now. Next I called my lawyer. I'd helped co-sign a personal loan 2 years ago when Jason wanted to start fresh and get his act together. He had defaulted twice already. I told the lawyer I wanted my name removed from the agreement. I didn't care how it looked. I didn't want to be responsible for $1 more of someone else's laziness. After that, I went into my investments. There was a bond one had kept untouched, earning just enough interest to quietly help cover my parents' taxes and utilities. I sold it, liquidated the funds and moved them into my private account. If the lights go out next month, they'll have to light candles and figure it out. I didn't tell anyone. No warning. No speech. Just clicks and confirmations. I took myself out of their lives in the exact same quiet way they had dismissed me, like I was never really there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't feel the need to explain myself to people who never asked how I was holding up. They weren't owed a heads up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to be the better person. I was just done being their doormat. I shut my laptop and sat back. The silence in my apartment felt different now. Peaceful. Not empty. Felt like breathing after holding it in for too long. Like finally stepping outside after being locked in a room with no windows. They had made it clear I didn't belong in their world. So I stopped holding it together for them. And one by one I began cutting the cords I had tied around myself to keep their lives afloat. Cords they never even noticed were bleeding me dry. The week after I quietly cut off all financial support was nothing like I expected. It wasn't filled with angry phone calls or dramatic confrontations at the dinner table. No, it was quieter, colder, but just as devastating in its own way. My phone started ringing early one morning. It was Mom, her voice tight, shaking with panic. "The mortgage payment bounced, honey," she said, as if that was a secret she was terrified to admit. "What happened?" "We got a notice from the bank." "This can't be happening." I didn't hesitate. I didn't stammer or try to explain myself. I was calm, colder than she was prepared for. "Maybe your golden child can figure it out," I said softly. "You've always made it clear who you cared about the most." There was a long silence on the other end. I could almost hear her trying to gather herself, trying to come up with words to fight back. But she just hung up. The next few days were a blur of silence from their side, except for occasional messages from my brother and sister. My brother's text was short, clipped. "Need help with the mortgage. Don't make me beg." My sister's was longer, filled with pleas and excuses. "The kids need their school fees. You've always been there before. Please don't let us down." I stared at my phone for a long time before I replied with a single sentence. "Sorry, I can't help this time." It was the hardest thing I'd done in a long while, to refuse them like that. But it was also the most freeing. Then the foreclosure notice arrived at their house. A thick envelope with official stamps and urgent warnings. I heard from family friends that the panic in their home was growing. My brother was frantically calling around for loans, begging for extensions. My sister was desperate to gather money from anyone who would listen. Still, I kept my distance. No calls. No visits. No rescue missions. I let the consequences of their choices unfold naturally, the same way they had let me feel invisible for years. One afternoon there was a quiet knock on my door. I opened it to find Mom standing there, tears streaming down her face, her voice barely a whisper. "You ruined everything," she said, her words heavy with accusation. "You tore this family apart. How could you do this to us?" I looked at her calmly, remembering the scene from Easter brunch, the way she had tossed my cake on the counter like trash, laughing as she told me my sister deserved the celebration more. I thought of the smirks and the mocking words that had cut deeper than any knife. "You did that at Easter," I said softly, my voice steady but firm. "I just finally agreed with you." Her eyes widened in shock. The truth had hit her harder than any fight could have. There was no fiery argument, no shouting match, just the silent weight of reality settling between us. That moment was a turning point, not just for her but for me. For years I had carried the burden of being the responsible one, the fixer, the invisible provider. But now I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. The peace that comes when you stop trying to fix what was never meant to be fixed. The power that comes when you realize your value isn't tied to someone else's approval. In the following days the calls slowed. The messages stopped. The family I once thought I had began to crumble, and I watched from a distance, not with satisfaction or cruelty, but with quiet acceptance. I started living for myself, not for the family that had never truly seen me. And sometimes late at night when the house was silent and the world felt still, I replayed that Easter brunch in my mind. The cold laughter, the tossed cake, the empty smiles. I realized then with absolute certainty that was the last time I ever showed up for them. Because now I showed up for me. After everything that had happened, after all the pain and silent sacrifices, I finally understood something important. I couldn't keep living trapped in the shadow of that family anymore. So, I made a decision that surprised even me. I bought a small house far away from the chaos, far away from the people who never truly saw me or cared about what I gave up for them. It wasn't a big, fancy home or a mansion like you see on TV. It was just a quiet little place, a safe space where I could breathe, think, and finally begin to heal. Moving into that house felt like stepping into a completely new life. For the first time in years, I wasn't the responsible one, the fixer, the person who paid the bills, cleaned the mess, or said yes to every demand. I was simply me, and I realized I needed to take care of that person first. I started to put my energy into myself. I began going to therapy, something I had avoided for so long because I thought I had to be strong for everyone else. But the truth was I was broken inside, and I didn't even realize it until I started peeling back the layers of hurt and disappointment. Therapy wasn't easy. Some days the memories and feelings overwhelmed me. But slowly I learned to be kind to myself. I learned that my value wasn't measured by how much I gave or how much I sacrificed for a family that never appreciated it. The hardest lesson of all was learning to say no. For so long, saying no felt like betraying them. Saying no felt like failure. But now I saw it differently. Saying no was not selfish. It was an act of self-respect. It was protecting my peace and my future. It was refusing to let my kindness be mistaken for weakness or taken for granted. I began setting clear boundaries I never thought I deserved to have. When they asked for money, I calmly told them no. When they expected me to drop everything and run to fix their problems, I chose to put myself first. At first, I worried about being judged or rejected. But surprisingly, I felt more free than I ever had before. Freedom came from owning my own life, my own choices. Day by day, I felt stronger. I felt more at peace. The anger and bitterness started to soften, replaced by a quiet strength that no one could take away. I surrounded myself with people who truly valued me. Friends who listened without judgment, neighbors who cared, and a few colleagues who respected my hard work. I found joy in the small things. Morning coffees on the porch, long walks in the fresh air, books that made me think and grow, music that soothed the soul. Sometimes, even now, my mind drifts back to them. My family. I remember how they treated me like I was invisible, how they laughed when I wasn't looking, how they made me feel like I was nothing more than a backup plan. That pain still lingers, but it doesn't cut as deeply as before. It's more like a distant echo, something I can hear but choose not to let rule my life. They taught me a cruel and painful lesson about what family was supposed to be. They said family was about sacrifice, about giving everything for each other, about unconditional love. I believed that. I lived that. I sacrificed everything for them. But what I didn't know was that I was the only one who was really bleeding. Not anymore. Now I understand family differently. Family isn't just about blood or tradition. Family is about respect, kindness, and support. Family is about lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. If the people who are supposed to love you the most aren't willing to treat you with basic respect, then maybe they aren't really family after all. I'm done bleeding for them. I'm done pretending that I mattered to people who clearly didn't. I'm done showing up to events where I'm treated like a stranger or a failure. I'm done being the one who always gave and never received. Instead, I show up for myself. I take care of my own needs, protect my peace, and build the life I deserve. It hasn't always been easy. There are days when the loneliness creeps in, when the memories sting, and when the old wounds feel fresh. But those days are fewer and farther between, because I have learned to hold myself with love and compassion. This journey has taught me that self-love isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's the foundation for every good thing in life. When you learn to love yourself, you stop settling for less than you deserve. You stop accepting mistreatment disguised as family drama. You stop giving your power away. I now have a small home filled with peace and quiet, a place where I am safe and where I can be truly happy. I fill my days with things that bring me joy, not stress. I focus on healing, growing, and dreaming again. They taught me that family was about sacrifice. I just didn't know I was the only one bleeding. Not anymore. And that realization has freed me in ways I never thought possible. Sometimes silence is the strongest scream. When you stop giving away your kindness to those who don't deserve it, that's when you truly take back your power. Revenge doesn't always have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's standing firm, setting boundaries, and reclaiming what you gave too freely. And in that calm strength you find peace, something no one can ever take away from you.